Welcome to MLSnet.com's Extra Time. I'm Greg Lawless. Shep Messing sitting here alongside. And busy week in MLS this week. Any quick thoughts before we get going?
Yeah, the highlight for me, Greg, your shirt. If you haven't had it for 7 days, maybe you can return it.
I got to find the receipt, or either that or just open it up all the way to the navel here. So we'll take a quick look at what we're going to do, what we're going to be doing this week. First, we're going to be talking about Kansas City and Eddie Johnson. The guy scored the second consecutive hat trick. Unbelievable. Next, we're going to look at the Gold Cup and some players in MLS that we think need to step it up in this period of play when some of their teams are down a player. Sean Wheelock has an interview with Jozy Altidore from the New York Red Bulls, and then we'll just sort of kick it around a little more. Kansas City had a great game this past weekend, 3-2 win over New York. They look great. Coach Kurt Onafo has them playing, and the story really is Eddie Johnson, his second consecutive hat trick. The guy is on fire. He was the man 2 years ago. He was less than the man, let's say, a year ago, and now he's back.
Yeah, Greg, I think Eddie Johnson was terrific. And you're right. I think a couple of years ago, his head got a little too big for the rest of his game. He's focused now. Kurt Onafo has this team motivated. You know, Kurt Onafo's mantra is really, we have to get forward, we have to score goals, we have to be exciting. No more exciting player in the league than Eddie Johnson. Great diagonal runs to get behind the defense, great service, and you know, once you get the ball, it's all about finishing. He was terrific.
And it's the finishing. That first goal, I still think, was one of the more beautiful goals I've seen. Just a little touch over the keeper. And really, they slapped New York around all day. And New York, obviously, is supposed to be one of the better teams. But Kansas City, definitely looking like the best team in the East, for sure. And maybe even the best team in the league right now. So.
Well, I think, you know, they still have to maintain it. They're going to lose Eddie Johnson now to Gold Cup. So he's been their prolific scorer. Let's see if they can hang on, continue to get victories without their main man.
Yeah, a couple of guys, you know, Scott Seeley has to get back from injury. Davey Arnaud, they need to step up and start playing. And teams are going to be losing players in Gold Cup. National teams taking players away. Somebody has to step up and be the man.
Yeah, Greg, I think that goes true for a number of players. I like Kenny Cooper because Kenny Cooper has to be thinking, hey, you know what? I should have been on that Gold Cup roster. I want to be on the national team radar screen. Carlos Ruiz, he's going to be gone. I'm the man. I want to help Dallas win and get the attention of Bob Bradley.
Yeah, it's the revenge factor, sort of. You want to go after them and say, Bob Bradley, hello, what are you doing? Give me a break here, you know? But one guy I like a lot is Kyle Martino for L.A. Landon Donovan off with the national team. Kyle needs to step up. He was the man in Columbus a couple years ago. Then he sort of fell off a little bit. Now he needs to step up. Frank Yallop needs to just tell him, you have to be the creative, spark in that midfield.
Well, I think you're right, but I think he was a better player when he had that long hair. He's adjusting.
It's always about the hair, as we all know.
He suffered when he was the man, when there were great expectations for him early in his career to be that midfield general. Now you're right. For the LA team, I mean, this is a great opportunity for Kyle Martino. Great skill on the ball, great vision. Landon Donovan gone, so there's an opportunity for him to really help his team. They need help and play his game.
Yeah, they do need help, and hopefully Kyle can step it up. You know, maybe another one of those guys that we in the media sometimes put a little too much pressure on to be something other than he really is, maybe when they're too young. Eddie Gavin, another example of that. Now, a young player who doesn't seem to be faltering under the media, though, is Jozy Altidore for the New York Red Bulls. Sean Wheelock caught up with him.
Jozy, a year ago, I don't think many players around the league knew who you were. Now everybody knows your name. You're the young guy now that everyone's talking about MLS. What's that been like, really, in the last 12, 14 months for you?
It's been a roller coaster ride, and it's been a great one, gaining experience playing in the league and playing with some of the world's top players, Juan Pablo and Claudio Reyna.
What have they taught you about what it's like to be a professional player?
They're so great at leading by example, They really don't have to speak, but, the things they say to me, just to keep my head, and that's the most important thing, and I try to do that day in and day out. And with that, and hard training, you can only go to the top. So that's what they've been preaching to me from day one, and I'm just trying to follow in their footsteps.
You play for an unbelievable head coach in Bruce Arena. What have you learned from Bruce Arena?
Bruce, he talks so much about the game, and he preaches it every day in and day out, the right things to do, and to be perfect at the little things. And that's the most important thing, and people don't realize that in the game. And I think that's something that needs to be preached more throughout not only youth soccer, but, professional ranks as well. And I think Bruce has helped his team in a tremendous way, and the way he approaches the game and the players is just something you can't teach or anything. You have to have.
With New York Red Bull striker Jozy Altidore, I'm Sean Wheelock for MLSnet.com.
Thanks, Sean. Great interview. Jozy Altidore, a great example of some of the young players that are taking over the league. He's already got 3 goals, almost an all-star-like season. And speaking of all-star, we'd like to remind you that the 2007 Sierra Mist All-Star Game will be taking place on July 19th out in Colorado. You can vote for your favorite All-Stars on MLSnet.com.
Well, Greg, it's my favorite time of the show. Your final thoughts?
My final thoughts. My final thoughts this week are with the referees. Since the league began, the referees have taken a beating. But this year, MLS took a stand and started making some strides to make it a little better. They hired 4 full-time referees. This past weekend, 6 red cards were handed out. Now, usually when 6 red cards are handed out in 6 games, you'd start to think something has gone wrong. But instead, I would say all of these red cards were legitimate. There was a reason they were all given out, and the referees should be commended. The referees have taken a beating in MLS for a long time. It's time now to start to think that they've actually started to make some strides.
Greg, I'm in total shock, but I agree with you.
Total shock because you agree, or total shock because you're okay with the referees?
Total shock because I agree with you.
Well, thanks again for hanging out with us this week. You can always have your opinion or your final thought on extratime@mlsnet.com. We'll get back to you with some of our thoughts on your emails. And you can come back next week. Shep and I will be here, and we'll kick it around again.